Okay, I think this is on. Just a quick late rant because I can. And I got this verse up here. Yeah, I redesigned my site this afternoon. I just felt like it. So I had that reference list a couple days ago and decided it just needed a makeover. So anyway, Matthew 5:23. If you're ever on your way to make an offering, remember your brother or sister has a reason to be upset with you. Leave your gift at the altar and first go back and reconcile with them. Then you can make your offering. The last couple Bible lessons I did was on salvation and that the heart of it is reconciliation. But that's what God offers to the world. Hey, Mark. But people don't do this very much on a personal level. Just recently there have been some people, not just one, so nobody knows who I'm thinking of right now, but people in YouTube land who have had a change of heart, and that's good. That's a good first step. In some cases, newly saved, and that's awesome. But you can't just go, okay, I'm saved now. We're everybody come back, and we'll just go forward. You have to have closure. You have to take care of unfinished business, which a lot of times is finding the people. You can't wait for them to just stumble upon you and go, hey, I'm sorry about what happened. You should seek them out and make things right, because this gets into a lot of times this ridiculous tranny gate crap that's going on in this conspiracy realm. More people. Hey, Rhonda, Maddie, someone I've never met before, Zane, and Libra Star. Good to see ya. But yeah, the thing is that, like with things like this tranny gate, just to use a recent a concept that just won't go away, and people are sincere. They think that there's a need to keep pointing at everyone and saying this person's a tranny, that person's a tranny, the other person's a tranny, everybody but me's a tranny, pretty much is what they say. And what good does that do anyone? I mean, it's one thing to be generally aware that especially the higher ups, so-called, in the world are not what they portray themselves to be, but you don't have to be pretending to be a tranny or something to be disingenuous. I mean, there are disingenuous people who we aren't alert to because they're not overtly so. They're not trying to do something ridiculous like pretend they're something they're not openly, like people who are like, there's some in the community, so-called, that I remember hearing like this one guy's natural voice, a deep resonant voice, and then he decided he's a woman and he tries to artificially raise the pitch of his voice and it sounds awful, but that's, at least that person is being open about being perverted. I have less of a problem with an open admitted pervert as far as, not doing harm to people. That's a different story, but pretending to be someone you're not but being open about it than I do with someone who doesn't either admit it or they're not even trying. They're not doing anything obvious to indicate that they are disingenuous, but there are a lot of people like that, and they're a bigger problem because they're concealed. So that whole transvestigation nonsense is a good way to tear people apart. I mean, when it gets so bad, as I've seen, that men with beards and low voices are called women, I just, how can this be? I mean, that's paranoia. That is not investigation at all. They shouldn't call it transvestigation because that's not what they're doing. They're being paranoid and just making a witch hunt out of it. That's all it is a witch hunt. And it doesn't solve any problems. It doesn't make you more awake. It doesn't make anything better. All it does is ruin people who are falsely accused. And every chance I get, I tell people who say that, put up or shut up. Because if you think somebody's a tranny, if you want to accuse them, pay for a DNA test, pay for scientific tests. They pretend to be about science. pay for a scientific test, and when it turns out that that person is who they claim to be and isn't a tranny, then the person who made the false claim and put them through all that should pay double as a penalty and a lesson for not falsely accusing. And that's been the problem with so many online communities, is guilt by suspicion only, guilt by paranoia, guilt by everything but evidence. And it just tears communities apart. And then the people who are left, yeah, sorry, Mark. But the people who are left are like, yeah, I got rid of all the deadwood. I knew a so-called pastor many, many years ago, like 40 years ago, man, that was proud of the fact that he went through the denomination getting rid of deadwood. He was just evil. And that goes on in the conspiracy realm as well, because they will accuse anyone and everyone of being what they're not and expect no repercussions, and then the other people get disgusted and leave, and then they feel like they did their job. And, well, they did a job, and it doesn't matter if the people that they falsely accused are, jerks and scumbags. It doesn't matter. It doesn't excuse false accusations, because everybody can find some dirt on everybody else and say, that's my excuse for falsely accusing you. It doesn't work that way, and people who do that, who dish it out, wouldn't want to take it. But the problem is that this is rampant online, especially in YouTube, where people just run around, have done it for years, run around accusing people of being trannies or agents or shills and all these names without any evidence. And even they think they have evidence. They're doing what amounts to playing anagrams and think this is a great awakening of some sort. But it's a game, not an investigation technique. I mean, yeah, I've said that before about the escrow account, but of course none of them will do that. But they play anagrams as well. This word association, S-U-N-S-O-N, taking every word and making anagrams out of it and saying, see, that person's an agent. Their name adds up to 666, or it means, Satan spawn if you rearrange the letters. This is ridiculous. And it's so disgusting that I just, if we all weren't so starving for actual fellowship, we wouldn't even click on some of these live hangouts, because it's gotten that bad. I mean, it's like dumpster diving. You're starving for fellowship, so you'll go to some of these places, and then it's just so disgusting. You'd rather starve to death than hang around with those people. But that's how bad it is. And everybody's made, condemned and held to be guilty on the basis of nothing but somebody doesn't like you, or they're suspicious, or they don't like your friends. I don't know how many times I've had people just wail on me for some friend that I have. They don't like what my friend's doing, so they jump on me as if I'm the other person's spokesperson, or it's my fault that there's something wrong with me for not liking the same people they like. And it just makes you really disgusted. So, but the thing is that again, that reason I got that verse up there is because there's too many people, especially in the brand new Christian realm, who, first of all, aren't willing to or haven't listened. They just start preaching immediately. And it's okay to preach the gospel. You have to understand it to be saved. But when it comes to theology or Christian living, when you first get saved, you should sit down and listen for a long time. I mean, it takes a long time for things to sink in, and there's no shortcut to maturity. But I've seen too many new believers that have never bothered to listen to anybody, and will immediately, start accusing fingers, as happened even years ago, at seasoned Christians who've been around, who studied the Bible, and then they're just like, no, you're stupid, you're wrong. And we also have the ongoing issue of my pet peeve, the topic that got me studying the Bible so deep, the women's issue in Christianity. There's people I just heard earlier today saying that, oh, women are supposed to keep silent in church meetings, and I'm just reading the Bible. No, you're not reading the Bible. You're twisting it because you're surface skimming. You're not looking at context. You're not looking at the language. You're not considering the fact that prejudice against women is the oldest prejudice since the Garden of Eden, and that, yes, there is evidence of collusion over generations of Bible translation and even monkeying with the Greek text. And if we didn't have ample evidence to double check it, we wouldn't even know this was happening. But it has happened, and I documented it on, I think, on my book, on the website, on my book site, on the You Are All One book, where I had documentation for studies that were done on the fact that in the book of Romans, there's a woman addressed called an apostle called Junia, and the people in charge of guarding the integrity of the Greek text, the United Bible Societies, back in the 50s, changed it to a masculine name without following any of their own rules for documentation, attestation they're supposed to have for determining what the meaning of a word was in first century Greek. And they broke their own rules. They didn't do any of that. They just said, this is a masculine name. This is a man. Because it's called an apostle, it must be a man. And that stood for 50 years. All those translations made in multiple languages from that text, and they all did a gender bender on Junia. And then they finally couldn't hide it anymore. Too many eyes were watching. And they quietly changed it back. Of course, not quietly enough, because we found out about it, that Junia is a woman, was a full-fledged apostle like anyone else, because they wouldn't doubt it if it was a man. They wouldn't doubt this person's credentials as an apostle with apostolic authority. And but they did this gender bender on Junia because they couldn't abide that. And that was the discussion at the meeting. I can't find the minutes of that meeting anymore. But they said that we just can't accept a woman apostle. So they changed the Bible. And, you know, the critics will say, see, we're right all along, the Bible is full of lies. No, the Bible is not full of lies. And the reason we know, you know, if you're going to accuse the Bible of being full of lies and people have made it up, you need to provide documented evidence. I have evidence for when the monkeying with the Bible happened. That's why I know most of its integrity is intact, because we know when something went wrong. They can always be found out. But the fact is that because of these bad teachings, that errors persist, that somehow Christianity has become a flesh-based religion with one gender getting entitlement and the other not, based upon surface skim, lazy reading of the Bible. And this is despicable because, and there was a number of years that I used to read these websites that got too depressing, of women who grew up with that kind of mentality, who were publicly shamed for having been raped by pastors. And they were made to apologize to the congregation for temptation when they did nothing of the sort. They were children at the time. And the number of pastors who have sent women to their deaths because the women would come to them saying, my husband's beating me, what can you do? And they would say, you have to take it as suffering for Christ, which is a terrible, evil lie, because suffering for Christ is supposed to come from unbelievers, not professing believers, and no man has a right to hit another person, especially someone in their own family, just because they don't obey them. It's all about authority. They love authority, and that's what the whole flesh-based entitlement teaching is, and it results in either at least the belittling of women as people, to severe psychological abuse and physical abuse, and often death. It has happened. And that's why this teaching of flesh-based entitlement is such a horrible, evil thing. And people don't take it seriously. They think that if you object at all to the traditional twisting of Scripture, then and you call out the proof text and go, look at the Greek, look at the culture, that isn't what you say, and they'll say, no, you just have a problem with authority. You need to submit yourself to authority, to some man. Or they'll say that some men need to submit to other men. As long as you're submitting to a man, they're happy. But this is control freak religion, not Christian religion, not from the Bible. And it goes on today, and there are new Christians being sucked into that, just like they're being sucked into Hebrew roots and all kinds of lordship salvation works. You know, you have to earn your gift and basically slap Jesus in the face by doing so. And it's just frustrating to watch. And the problem is, again, you know, you can cut your losses and say, well, the people who are in that, God will have to work with them. But I see new Christians being dragged into that, and I just can't stomach it. So new Christians are being, it's just like Jesus said to the Pharisees, you go over land and sea to win a single convert, and then you make them twice as much a child of hell as you are. This is what I see happening to new believers, that if Satan can't stop them from receiving the gospel, he can sure mess them up afterwards. And it all, again, always comes back to humility. If you understand the gospel, you accepted a gift in all humility, or you weren't saved. So why is it that they can't be humble enough to say, I'm a newborn spiritual baby, I need parenting? Why can't they do that? Why is there so much pride? Pride is the devil's sin. And I'm not saying those people are not saved at all. I'm just saying they're not growing. They're being snatched up as soon as they're born, just like another, you know, Bible illustration from Revelation where the dragon sought to devour the child coming from the woman with the 12 stars and the sun and the moon as soon as the child was born. He failed, but I see that happening to new Christians all the time. And again, I keep wondering, where are the other Christians? Why aren't there very many of us putting up any objection to this sort of thing and stepping up and saying, hey, look, new Christian, let me help you. But they don't want help. And I don't see the Christian community coming together over this. Just like I don't see them standing up in the conspiracy channels and saying, you know, every time somebody says something ridiculous like the Jesuits wrote the Bible or the Romans wrote the Bible, which is patently false, and I've done plenty of videos showing the details why. But I don't see Christians standing up against those things. They just don't care. And it's really sad to watch. But yeah, it's definitely spiritual war. But you can't, it's like today's Christians want to go out to the battlefield in their underwear. You know, how long do they think they're going to last without spiritual armor? Which is not something you just slap together and run out to battle. It's something you live in. It's something you practice. You know, whether it's soldiers or musicians or whatever it is, you spend much more time practicing than doing the actual thing you're training for. And Christians aren't doing that. They're not willing to be discipled. There aren't enough people to do the discipling. And as a result, you have people just, like Jesus said, looking in pity at Israel, saying they were like sheep without a shepherd. Sheep are pretty dumb animals and pretty vulnerable to just about anything. And that's, I think, an apt description of the Christian community at large, because they don't want instruction when they're first saved, and instead, if they do, they'll latch on to some charismatic personality, not meaning the gift of charismatic, you know, that whole thing, but an attractive personality, a strong personality, or a good speaker, and they bristle then at anyone who criticizes that speaker. Just a few days ago, clean underwear. Not after they've been out in the battlefield, it won't be clean anymore. But anyway, a few days ago, there was a channel that by a popular flat earth pastor, so-called, whose followers we're all about practically worshiping this guy, as you have to be under authority. You have to be under authority. It's not doing them any good, quite clearly. It's making it into a cult. And that's the reason why I say that denominationalism, the thousands of denominations, is a good sign, because it means it's not a cult, because people are free to disagree. Now, within those denominations, not so much, and that's the problem, and that's why I'm not in a denomination. But the fact is that Christianity, unlike other religions, does allow dissent on a massive scale. But the problem, again, is not only for the new Christians, not only a lack of humility, but a lack of concern for studying the Bible before they go out talking about it. Again, I'm not saying a new believer can't spread the gospel. They should be able to. They should do that. But beyond that, it's a matter of upbringing, and you can't bring yourself up. Yes, we all have this Holy Spirit. Yes, we all read the Bible with sincerity, I would like to hope. But people can still disagree. Sincere people can disagree, and each side accuses the other of not really honoring Scripture. But what the common denominator is, nobody's listening. There's a lot of people who want to talk and talk and talk when they're newly saved, and just talk and talk and talk, but they don't listen. Or people who've been, in the conspiracy realm, they don't listen. I've done a ton of listening to people over the years, and I don't seem to get that in return too much. People want to tell me stuff, but they don't want to hear me tell them stuff. Which is why I guess I don't wind up on their panels too often, because I know how this goes. And they don't invite me anymore anyway, because, I guess I'm not a good enough punching bag as a Christian. If it's an unchristian panel, or the Christian panels, I'm not cultish enough, for lack of a better word. I will not, I will say what I think. I say it politely as I can, but they don't want to hear even the most polite disagreement. It's just intolerable to them. So, but yeah, new believers on fire, they can be dangerous, like I used to say about rookies in the NFL. The other players are kind of afraid of them at first, because they're so bent on proving themselves worthy that they're dangerous. Yeah, wanting to start a church when you're a new believer, it's the height of arrogance. And I have to wonder how much of the gospel people with that attitude understand, if they should be the most humble people who are out starving and looking for teachers, But they're not. They want to be teachers right away. That's what the problem was that Paul wrote to, I think it was Timothy. There are people who want to be teachers but don't know what they're talking about. And that's the whole cultural and situational backdrop, the context of what he said about women in that letter, and this is what gets twisted. They don't understand that backdrop, that there were people there, and one of whom was a woman who had come from other religions, newly saved, and thought they could walk in being a teacher because they were teachers in their old religion. It doesn't work that way. But, let's see, look at the chat. Sorry, I saw it move, which I don't expect usually on my Hangouts, but Starving Fellowship, feed me, see more what? See, miss listeners. Okay, I'm not quite following you, what you're writing, but yeah, this I started out with this verse because there's too many people who have been newly saved and forgot to go back and make things right with people that they wronged. And it just makes more pain and division, because people who were wrong deserve to have an apology, and sometimes it needs to be public because the wrong was public, But yeah, we will all, you can be You can humble yourself or be humbled. I'd rather humble myself. But that's even, in James, the most elementary and earliest of the New Testament letters, was just about practical living of what it means to be, it's just smart to be humble, because if you elevate yourself, you'll be put down. But if you humble yourself, you'll be elevated. That's how God works. And a lot of times that's even how society works. But we all need to try to stand up better. It is hard because a lot of times the people speaking are on a panel, they're all supporting each other, and you're in the chat trying to keep up, and sometimes YouTube, helpful as it is, tells you you've sent too many messages in too short a time. But it is a big problem that you can't get an audience, to tell people there's an issue. All right, thanks, Maddie. Interesting name. But yeah, I just needed, because sometimes you just need to verbalize what you're seeing happening. And that's what I needed to do, because like I said, I covered a bunch of things, whether it's this lack of humility, lack of willingness to go and make things right once you're newly saved, lack of willingness to be trained first before you call yourself a teacher, ridiculous things that people go off, just accusing everybody on the basis of nothing but suspicion or personal dislike. And it's just, so many, they say that the saying, death by 1,000 cuts, and that's what happens a lot of times. Yeah, Maddie, I just didn't understand what you were saying. It was kind of hard to figure out what you meant. But, anyway, yeah, no problem at all. But that's really all I had to say. I mean, I've got like over 400 videos now. I have over 600 posts on my blog. I wrote a book, several books, but one that's actually get printed. But I do all this stuff, and so it's there, anybody can read or watch. But there's a lot of people who've known me for years who never watched anything or read anything that I've done, and I do that so I don't have to keep repeating it, just to be heard. That's all I was ever asking. And so that's the problem. There's a lot of people I'll try to maintain a relationship with of some kind, even if it's at a fair distance, that people are like, why are you talking to that person? But I'm like, well, I can't make them listen to me is the problem, or why are you friends with that person? I'm like, I can't make anybody do anything. I wouldn't want to. God doesn't even do that. But I try to be patient and wait for an opportunity to talk to them. But most of the time, you don't get that. There's a person on a panel and you're in the chat. It's not a good way to personally talk to them one-on-one. You rarely get that opportunity. And that's, if I say hi to people, it's just to try to keep the channel open, not channel in the YouTube sense, but you know what I mean. Keep the line open and not burn the bridge too soon. And the thing is, no matter how long you've been waiting, if you do burn the bridge, they tell you did it too soon, but what can you do? But yeah, I am, and it is encouraging. 8 isn't a lot, but it's more than I usually get. I'm usually down to 6 or 2. So thanks for coming, all of you. And I don't know if I have any solutions for any of this, other than I do try to focus on getting Christians to at least try to study the Bible before they go around teaching. If more of us could do that, that would be awesome. I would love to do hangouts with others, but they're typically nobody interested. Yeah, herding cats. It's hard to find anyone, we're in different time zones. People were, are either working or busy some other way. It's funny how the people who do those false accusations and have nothing better to do than try to pretend that they're armchair investigators, you can find 50 people to get on the panel. The panels are always full any day of the week, 24 hours a day. But to talk about anything calmly, or especially to talk about the Bible, is just there's nobody around. Or, you know, who would like to be. They're just not all at the same time. I don't know what to do about it. Yes, be filled with the Spirit, but there's a Bible. The Bible's written for a reason. If it was just a matter of spirit, we wouldn't need the Bible, and everyone would agree. But since that's not the case, I mean, most of the New Testament letters were written because there was a problem in the early church that needed to be addressed, and it was addressed with words and arguments and building a case and appealing to Scripture and talking things over. That's how God has chosen to work with people. But yeah, it's you know, it's an important topic, especially that Christians should be talking together. But you know, there's a gazillion Christian YouTube channels that I've been supporting or trying to. Most of them won't give me the time of the day because they view me a heretic on one point or another, and not all on the same point. So it's not like they're in a unified agreement that I'm a heretic. It's just that they don't like what I believe about women in Christianity, or Bible versions, or security of salvation, or Hebrew roots, or whatever it is. It's always a different thing. But, you know, like I've said, I've been to a lot of other people's channels, but they don't invite me on panel. They don't watch my videos. So, you know, I'm not going to force my way in. So, but yeah, it's up to God. And all I can do is try to point out issues, and hopefully a solution will present itself eventually. But yeah, panel talks would be nice. But like I said, you can get people on any other topic, especially even if they're bashing the Bible. They love to do that. A lot of people do. And you can find full panels any time of the day or night for that. But if you want to talk calmly about the Bible and disagree like adults, nobody wants to do that. So, but yeah, I mean, even two people on panels, okay, but it's really, people like to hear a conversation of a group. And I can't find two Christians to rub together most of the time, you know. I can't find people who are available at the same time on the same day on any kind of schedule, you know. Other people don't need to schedule because there's always people around, but it's not the case with people who want to study the Bible together. So anyway, it's late, so I'll probably shut down pretty soon. I'll just go ahead and shut this down and just, you know, take one last look at the internet today, I guess. But not sure what my next lesson will be. This part 2 that I did this morning was kind of a God, well, it was absolutely a God thing, because I didn't plan to do a part 2 on salvation. It just, you know, one of those things that I call a download, where I've got words in my head that I have to write down, and then the next thing I know, I got a lesson to do. But nothing right now. Time to rest. So anyway, yep. I thought you actually went to bed earlier. You had said you were going to relax and then go to sleep, so I didn't even check. Sorry. But this was a spur of the moment thing. Just had stuff rolling around in my head I needed to verbalize. Yep. We had hoped there are some in our little group, Mark, that would kind of do recruiting, so to speak, but I have to wait for that to work out. So if we have more people in our circles, then it will be more likely that we'll have a group on panel. So, but yeah, thank you again for coming, everybody, and hopefully someday that'll pan out. So, thanks again. See everybody. Have a good night.